Gazan is going to be speaking with us, and she's waiting in the wings. So let me introduce her. Leah Gazan has been the NDP Member of Parliament for Winnipeg Centre since 2019. She is currently the NDP critic for children, families, and social development, as well as the critic for women and gender equality and deputy critic for housing. In 2021, Gazan introduced Bill C-223, the National Framework for a Guaranteed Livable Basic Income Act, which builds on a previous motion, M46, she tabled to convert the Canada Emergency Response Benefit into a permanent GLBI. I would encourage you all to talk to your MPs and ask them to support Bill C-223. Gazan is a member of Wood Mountain Lakota Nation, located in Saskatchewan Treaty 4 territory. Prior to being elected to Parliament, Gazan co-founded the We Care campaign aimed at building public will to end violence against Indigenous women and girls. So welcome, MP Leah Gazan.
Thank you so much, everybody. And I'm so sorry I have to interfere with your lunch. I have a very busy job, and I know what it's like to, eat on the run. So thank you for being so accommodating with me today. It's such an honor to be joining you today from unceded Algonquin territory, otherwise known as Ottawa, to talk about a couple of things. One, my framework to put in place a guaranteed livable basic income, and the reasons why this is so critical if we are going to address growing inequality in this country. So I was elected in 2019, and when I was elected, I had put forward a motion to put in place a guaranteed livable basic income, very much similar to my bill now. And one of the reasons why I did that, I've been a longtime anti-poverty advocate. I often say that keeping people poor is one of the most violent human rights violations, and it is political. It is a political choice to keep people poor in this country and not take measures necessary to ensure that everybody can live in dignity, that everybody, we can ensure that everybody has their human rights met. So I put in a framework in this parliament. I was elected again in 2021. I call myself the professional candidate because I've been through 2 elections in less than 4 years, and a nomination that took about a year. But in 2021, when I came back, I decided to put a private member's bill forward, Bill C-223, in support of developing a national framework for a guaranteed livable basic income. And the purpose of the bill is as follows: that the minister develop a national framework for the implementation of a guaranteed livable basic income program throughout Canada for any person over the age of 17, including temporary workers, permanent residents, and refugee claimants. Because, like I said, not ensuring that people have what they need to thrive is a political choice, especially when we see the amount of waste that has been given to, for example, by governments to, for example, subsidies to Loblaws to buy fridges, $12 million, in fact, $50 million to MasterCard. All I'm saying is let's take this money and let's invest in people, because we know that there is growing inequality in this country. I represent a community called Winnipeg Centre. The Child Poverty Report Card came out. We are the poorest urban center in the country, and that's a choice. There's no reason why children in this country have to live in poverty. There is no reason why seniors in this country have to live in poverty. There's no reason why workers in this country have to live in poverty. So what I've been saying is that I'm actually not offering up anything new. We have income guarantees in the country now. I'll give you an example. GIS for seniors. That's an income guarantee. It's not livable. EI benefits, should you lose your employment, again, an income guarantee, not livable. The Canadian Child Benefit, income guarantee, again, not livable, and also excludes certain families based on their citizenship status. And what I've been saying is that children are children, no matter who you are or what your citizenship status are. No child in this country should ever live in poverty, because we know that there are lots of people falling through the cracks, people with complex mental health and trauma issues, who, for whatever reason, might not be able to work 5 days a week. Maybe they can work 1 day a week and do really well, but still deserve to live in dignity. I know so many people in my riding of Winnipeg Centre that, because for no fault of their own, because of how they were born or what they've had to deal with in their lives, may not be able to hold down a 5-day-a-week job. And I want to make sure that everybody in my community and across the country can have what they need to live in dignity. Because we need to modernize our social safety net. We know our social safety net is totally archaic. We have an EI system in studies that I've done in the House of Commons that is so archaic. It would cost more to fix it than to replace it. We need to modernize our social safety net to make sure that it meets everybody's needs. So like I said, when I got elected in 2019, when I got elected, the first thing I did after the election date, within a month, was to put forward a private member's bill for a guaranteed livable basic income. And what's unique about my bill is it goes farther than just having a guaranteed livable basic income. It calls for a guaranteed livable basic income in addition to current and future government programs and supports meant to meet special or specific and special needs. I'll give you an example. Affordable housing with rent geared to income. We just introduced, our party, the NDP, just pushed the government to introduce a national dental care plan, a national child care plan, because we know that you cannot be successful if you gut our social safety net. We need to build on our social safety net to make sure that nobody is left behind. And we have to base that on facts. I was very pleased to listen to the panel just before I got on talk about the Mincome study in Manitoba, because what the Mincome study found, in fact, is when you invest in people, it saves money. We saved money on mental health supports. We saved money in terms of mental health justice systems. We saw higher rates of students graduating from high school. So we need to stop talking about investing in people as costly, because we know that when we invest in people, it is not only saves lives, but it also improves the quality of life for everyone. And we saw that in the Mincome study. We can't base decisions or legislation based on things that are not factual. And what I've been calling on, we need to stop poor bashing, certainly in places like the House of Commons, and we need to respond with compassion in a way that has been researched, in a way that is fact-based. So my bill, it is my hope that my bill can be passed in the House of Commons and we can finally have a piece of legislation that addresses the growing inequality in this country. Now, I want to turn my attention over to gender-based violence. We know that there is a direct correlation between gender-based violence and poverty. In fact, Call for Justice 4.5 of the National Inquiry into Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls calls to implement a guaranteed livable basic income for all Canadians over the 18, because we know that there is a direct correlation between poverty and gender-based violence. Many of you might have heard about the women who were murdered in Winnipeg: Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, Rebecca Contois, and Buffalo Woman. Although one of the women has not been identified, we know that two of the women that were eventually murdered by the suspected serial killer, who currently has been charged, were living in shelters in Winnipeg. They did not have access to affordable housing. They did not have access to a guaranteed livable basic income, and that made them vulnerable, ultimately resulting in them losing their lives. We have a crisis of violence in this country, and we have had study after study after study after study in the Status of Women Committee. And I regularly ask women's groups, is a guaranteed livable basic income, if we put a guaranteed livable basic income in place in Canada, would it help with the crisis of violence, and would it help to save lives? And organization after organization after organization supports the need to put in place a guaranteed livable basic income. In fact, we're currently doing a study on sex trafficking in the Status of Women Committee. And once again, I am fighting for a guaranteed livable basic income. And I ask the question, if we put in place a guaranteed livable basic income, would it protect women, girls, and diverse gendered folks from potentially being trafficked? And organization after organization, even when people disagree on the subject matter, say yes, we need to put in place a guaranteed livable basic income, because lives are valuable. We have to stop making public policy based on judgment. Going back, many folks in my riding are living with complex mental health and trauma. Many wind up living on the streets, unhoused, for many different reasons. And if you go up to the folks in my riding, my constituents, and you ask them what their story is, where do they come from? Everybody has a story. Everybody, no matter where we find ourselves in life, everybody has a story. And whether you're raised in your family or not, everybody comes from a mother. And everybody has, I believe, at least one person who accepts or loves them unconditionally. We have to stop pathologizing and poor bashing and making decisions based on stigma that is often projected at people living in poverty. And we have to understand this is not just an economic decision. This is a human rights decision. It disturbs me that in my very backyard, my neighbors, my constituents don't have a place to live and are not being provided what they need to live in dignity. Because going back, this is a political choice. The budget just came out. The federal budget just came out. And if you look at the investments, where investments are made, less investments are being made in terms of lifting up the human rights of all individuals in Canada. If you look at the fact that wherever you stand on the pipeline debate, wherever you stand, I don't believe pipeline companies need to have subsidies. In the budget, In the budget, instead of subsidizing fossil fuel subsidies, why don't we subsidize the folks in my backyard and in communities across this country to make sure that they have what they need? And I feel really strongly about this. I feel really strongly about this because we are at a critical juncture. We know more than ever, especially with a looming recession, that people are at risk. We know that gender-based violence, for example, has increased during the pandemic. We know that since the pandemic, there are more and more people that are experiencing being unsheltered for the first time. And we know that there's growing inequality and growing levels of policy. So I'm going to continue to push this bill, and I'm going to call on this government to, instead of placing the owner on people that are living in precarious economic conditions, I'm going to call on this government to go after big corporations, tax big corporations, go after the ultra wealthy to pay their fair share and invest that money in people. And I share that because as I present to you today, I have been calling on the government to not go after families who received the CERB during the pandemic, especially families, because we know that costs during the pandemic for families increased. I'm asking for the government, and I, along with my colleagues, are calling on the government to put in place CERB amnesty for those individuals who got the CERB, who now will be forced to pay it back, who are already living in precarious financial circumstances. And we know the ones at most at risk are single mothers with multiple children. We need to change the way we do things in this country. We need to modernize our tax system to make sure that those who earn more pay more. I don't know how you feel, but I think it's far time in this country that we abolish billionaires and we take that money and we invest in people. There is more than enough money to go around to pay for a guaranteed livable basic income. And that's all I'm asking for in this bill. But it's not me. This bill was developed, I call it the People's Bill. And it was a bill that was developed in direct consultation and direct guidance from the Guaranteed Livable Basic Income movement. I saw Sheila Regeer online pop on stage, one of the folks behind this bill, Guaranteed Income Manitoba, Guaranteed Income Canada, guaranteed income groups from across the country got together and put together a bill. So this is a people's bill. This is a movement bill. So I am so thrilled to join you today as you gather. You are the boots on the ground. You are the ones holding government to account, because it will take a movement to get this passed through Parliament. And I believe in movements. I believe in movements for change. I believe in movements for change because I come from the movement. I was funded by the movement. I was elected in the movement to fight for human rights. And I believe that a guaranteed livable basic income, ensuring that nobody lives in poverty in this country, is at the foundations of lifting up human rights in this country. So I'm not sure how long this conference is, but I hope you all take the opportunity to work together, to build those strong connections, to come up with actions that you can leave with at the end of this conference, to hold us to account in the House of Commons, because we do take notice. I'll give you an example. Sometimes the Guaranteed Livable Basic Income movement has had email campaigns. I believe one of the reasons why my motion in the first, when I was elected first in 2019, got so much attention was because of the emails that flooded MP offices, senators' office to say you need to support a guaranteed livable basic income in Canada. We need the same thing now. We need the same thing now for Bill C-223 and for Senator Kim Pate's bill, Bill C-233, the exact same bill as mine that has been put forward in the Senate side. We need your support to put pressure on elected officials to say, if you do not support a guaranteed livable basic income, we may not vote for you in my case. And we need to put pressure on the Senate to know that Canadians are watching, and we are forcefully asking through emails, through gatherings, through conferences, that this government finally puts in place a guaranteed livable basic income in addition to current and future government programs and supports meant to meet specific and special needs. Because we know no matter where we end up in life, we never know what can happen. And we are responsible for everyone in the circle. I was taught that by my mother. I was taught that by my mother, who said, you know what, Leah, she said, go out, make sure whatever you do, get an education, because you never know what can happen in life. And life happens, as we know, without making plans. I think of all my constituents that are currently living on the margins, who currently live and get up every day and have to fight because their human rights are not being honored. And my mother always said, you never know what can happen in life. We're all one paycheck away from being on the poverty line. And I want to ensure, if there's one thing that I do in my time in the House of Commons, that no matter what happens in anybody's life, we never know what can happen, that everybody can be looked after without judgment, without persecution. These are human rights matters. And so I call on all of you today to please write your members of parliament, talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, continue to build this movement, because the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And I will be standing along with you until we actually achieve having a guaranteed livable basic income for all in Canada. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that inspiring speech, MP Leah Gazan. And I join my voice with yours and urge people to write their MPs and encourage them to support Bill C-223. Write your senators and encourage them to speak out in support of Bill S-233. Both of them identical bills. In the House, encourage your MP to support it, even if they are not an NDP MP. We need more MPs willing to clasp hands together and work together for this important initiative. And thank you so much for all of the work that you do, Leah.
And thank you, everybody here. Have a wonderful conference. And I'm sorry I can't be there in person, but I wish you all the best, and we will win this. Thank you, everybody.